Hello everyone. Actually, I'm not going to show you any kind of tutorial today. That's not my intent. But all I'm going to do is just beat around the bush with the things that I've always come across with debugging issues. That's why I'm here. Using effective design patterns with RxSwift. For that, oh my god. I didn't know that my face would be like that. My name is Kevin, from Uzbekistan. I was supposed to be an iOS developer, but at the same time I'm an Android and iOS developer. And I work at Lighter's company, and our product is cookie application. You can always check that out on App Store and Google Play Store. Interesting facts about myself is that I sometimes go off topic when I'm speaking. I'm sorry about that. And another interesting fact is that ChatGPT and Android Studio IDE don't like me. And when I ask ChatGPT something, it gives me like wrong answers. And all right, jokes aside, the contents and what I'm going to give you a little bit about my own experience and struggles with the design patterns and architecture. And starting off with what do we know about RxSwift in the first place, then why design patterns matter, and a little bit about MVVM, design pattern, and advantages and disadvantages of RxSwift along with MVVM pattern, and when you should and you should not use this method. And RxSwift is the library which was developed by Microsoft so many years ago, and it's still being developed year by year, day by day. And this methodology and this movement has its. But what I'm going to say is like there is Rx Kotlin for Android, and there's like Rx JavaScript, and the main purpose of using Rx is that it's reactive, and it is you can use it for event-based like programming. And when it comes to take care of the events in your application, if you want to make it more faster and more effective, you should consider using RxSwift. And along with design patterns. And have you ever come across the application or any kind of GitHub project that you downloaded or just cloned? You don't really understand like which folder or what file that you're looking at. For example, Swift file or Objective-C file, and you read the code and you still don't understand, like, is this the model, or is this the view model, or is this the controller? What is it doing? And this is I think this is the most struggle that as a developer and programmer you come across, but because of the design pattern that the programmer, the actual iOS developer does not put into places. So that's why design patterns matter. And overall, that is called the architecture of the application. And before I go through another slides, like, can I ask you questions like what kind of design patterns and what kind of methods do you use for structuring your application while you're developing? Is there anybody else? Yeah, that's.
Okay, I can do it. I can do it. Before that, I was mostly using MVVM,
Yes.
but then after that, I did a lot of React. So it makes me think, oh, I like the idea of having like a unique source of truth. So I did like TCA a lot in RxSwift. So yeah, that's for me. Well, who is using MVVM already? That's better. Who is using MVC? Okay, so who is using TCA?
Yeah, thank you. Actually, I've never heard about that. TCA. So a little bit about MVVM example. This is clean architecture design pattern with MVVM. So I'm not going to go through all the, because I know everybody knows about how to structuring their folders for a better use in the future. This one is basic example of MVVM. As we know, MVVM stands for model view model. So a model of the application and the design pattern is responsible for the business logic that you can get the all business logic from the back end, and then you can use it for with protocols, and then that responds to the view model, and after that that view model responds to the view that you can show it on your application, and using the MVVM design pattern with along with RxSwift, the advantage. Oh, I'm sorry, I'm going off topic here again. But this is the, as you can see, there is the structure how every part of the design pattern is talking to each other. First, there are repositories that basically is responsible for how you construct your model, and then there is like third-party entities that directly goes to domain of your application, and after that will be responsible for taking care of how the view and view controls of your application is talking to other entities. And this is another example of how three part of the MVVM design pattern is talking to each other. Yes, that is how we. In my own experience and the years that I've worked as an iOS developer, I've worked with MVVM design pattern and Viper and MVC. And as a beginner, I think everybody started with MVC, with or without knowing that. I think every one of us were using MVC, and then kind of watch some YouTube videos or tutorials that MVVM is the best design pattern. But I don't think, from my own experience, I don't think there is no any best design pattern or architecture that we can follow. But it always lays down to the ideology of what we are building and what are we going to achieve with that direction. If you're comfortable with Viper, you should. It doesn't mean that you should always use Viper, but we always have to look at the business logic and then the functionalities that we're going to present to the world. And of course, the ease of use and, for example, future changes might happen in your application. So my advice, and from my own experience, MVVM is the best design pattern for me. For the time being, I don't know what's going to happen next month. MVVM is the best design pattern for me for now, because it is when I am using with MVVM, with RxSwift particularly, it is really easy for me to add some features without disturbing to other part of my application, and then test it separately. And that is why I think for now MVVM is the best design pattern for me, and not best actually, like that is effective. Advantages and disadvantages of RxSwift while you are using with MVVM model, and we always have to look at what we are building. We have to design, and we have to know that before we jump into working with RxSwift with the help of with MVVM. We always have to design, and we always have to ask ourselves like what we are building. For example, if your company is building like standalone application that does not have to be changed every now and then. For example, there are applications that have to be updated like 4 times a month. In that case, RxSwift and MVVM is the best choice for you. But if your application does not have to be, for example, if your application does not have to be changed or does not have to be updated, or it's just like has the one and only functionality that sells to the customers, you can consider using other design patterns as you wish, as we all wish, and we also have to look at the business logic of our application. And from my experience, I'm working on the social media application, and it's purely built on RxSwift library, and the architecture is MVVM. And I can tell you that it is very easy to make changes to that application compared to Swift UI and just purely UI kit. And that is it for my presentation. And is there any questions about this? What I've told.
Thank you for your presentation. It was very interesting. And lastly, you told to us that the changing of the code base was more easier than using the RxSwift to combine RxSwift with the MVVM instead of using the purely related or Swift UI, which makes you feel more comfortable when changing the components of the code.
With RxSwift?
Yeah, RxSwift and MVVM.
Yes, the projects that I'm working on is like 2 of them I'm building with RxSwift and MVVM, because when you start working on that application and when you clarify the architecture, and it becomes more easier to make changes. And comparing to UI kit and just purely using the UI kit without like taking care of the architecture, it becomes like more and more dependent on one feature, and it becomes more difficult for me. I don't know for others. And another thing is that RxSwift is not a framework; it's just a library. So you can always use RxSwift, and you can choose not to use RxSwift in most of the parts of the pages and features of your application. It's just a free will.
Thank you.
Anyone?
have you considered using Combine instead of RxSwift?
No, I always failed at Combine, so...
What were the failure points, or what about Combine weren't satisfactory for your application?
Actually, I did not have time for my side hustle applications, but I always wanted to use Combine. But the projects, as a freelancer, projects that I worked on were always on Swift UI, either Swift UI or RxSwift. That's why maybe I'm just like selfish to just choose like only two frameworks. But I've heard that Combine is more effective in terms of taking care of the changes in the application. But I think.
Well, I'm really excited someone who uses the MVVM framework because I'm using it. Everyone I'm at iOS developer are mostly using MVC frameworks. I'm really curious though, like if you're using MVVM framework, I wonder if you tried the TDD and is there any experience or is there any good experience or bad experience with using TDD?
No, I've never tried that before. But I will try that and I will share my experience with you in the near future.
Yeah, I got one question. So it's a bit like what has been asked just before, because when Combine wasn't a thing, a lot of people were using RxSwift, and Combine was introduced, and then it was the kind of native way. You didn't need to install an external dependency, so maybe you already answered that, but if you had to create a new project from scratch, would you use RxSwift, or would you, even though you didn't try it, but would you be more inclined to use the Combine because it's native?
If it's my own project, I would try Combine because it doesn't have any deadline, right? But as a freelancer, I already told about that. As a freelancer, like when the time and the deadline is considered, RxSwift is a choice because you can achieve a tremendous amount of results at the short period of time with the help of MVVM, of course.
Because, as you said, RxSwift is just like a library.
Yes.
So you could very easily remove RxSwift, use Combine, remove Combine, use ReactiveSwift.
Yes.
And at the same time, it's linked to the Korean industry, but on a lot of job position online, you see a lot of MVVM and RxSwift requirements. So it seems that in Korea, this combination, MVVM and RxSwift, is something very, very popular. So anyone here want to talk a bit about that? Like they saw this, especially if you have people looking for jobs, and they have seen that this pattern is coming regularly. The job opportunities, they kind of required skill or preferred skill, they often ask MVVM and RxSwift. Has everyone noticed that or knows about this, or is it just me? Okay. And one thing you maybe not mentioned, and might be a good reason why to still use RxSwift instead of Combine, is as you said, you are an Android developer. So you do have the same methods with RxJava or RxKotlin. So that might be a strong point of using RxSwift, because if you have other departments in your company, other team members that are doing Android backend, frontend, they might be using the same Rx pattern in another language. So it's very easy to communicate with those team members and exchange like knowledge, because the fundamental approach of RxSwift is the same Rx Java, Rx Optin, based on a single idea, the same idea, so it's very easy to talk to your peers that are using technology around that. That's not possible to combine. So, is it the case in your company?
Yes, that's the case, because the backend and the web is, they're purely using Rx method. And I am, at the same time, I'm using Rx Kotlin for Android and RxSwift for iOS. So that's why I'm like such a stubborn on just like pointing out like Rx is the best, Rx is the best. But one of the best things I heard about my father is that the best phone is the phone that you have. So if you're comfortable with any kind of design pattern or any kind of methodology on that, it's the best thing that you have. So it is just my insights and like takeaways from the experience that I'm facing these days. Thank you very much.
Any other questions? No? Okay, thanks Kevin.
Thank you.